Are now joined on the line by Sarah Kimani. She is in Marrakesh, Morocco. Sarah, welcome and thank you so much for joining us. Now, day one of this important summit, what came out of it today?
Well, the meeting actually kicked off this morning, and one of the issues that came out of the meeting is that they're calling it the COP of action, and so they want to see now action into the agreement that was passed in Paris and came into force on Friday last week. And so they're saying that they will now move to draft a rule book which will come into effect at least by 2018, and countries will be expected to be seen to be making tangible decisions and solutions to climate change issues.
Now, Sarah, what exactly are these rules and processes that expect to be implemented by 2018 by different countries who are party to the Paris Agreement?
One of the issues that they will be expected to do is to detail what they are doing to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in order to reduce global warming. They'll also be expected for developed countries to show what they are doing or what contributions they are making to materialize the flow of $100 billion per year by 2020 that they have promised developing countries to support them to fight climate change. Because one of the issues that has come out from this meeting is that of the 56 countries that are worst affected by climate change, 36 of them are in sub-Saharan Africa, and most of them are too poor to be able to, on their own, finance adaptation measures or mitigation measures, and yet they're the countries that are faced by drought, they're faced by flooding, and most of them are actually so food insecure that if nothing is done, then populations are very vulnerable. And that is one of the issues that came out of the meeting, that Ségolène Royal, the finance minister for France, saying that she hopes that the big nations will come up with issues that will address issues of climate justice, especially for Africa.
Now, Sarah, funding was a big issue. If we go back, $100 billion climate fund was a sticky issue in the last summit. Could the issue of funding be finally put to bed at this conference?
Well, we understand that already. We spoke to some of the developing nations representatives, and they are worried that how the money has been accounted for, or how countries that have pledged money to developing countries are saying we have given this certain amount of money to these countries is actually not being done right. And so they are asking that there is transparency during this meeting and that this money is more predictable, because they say it is very difficult for African nations and developing countries to plan while the finance is not there. And so they want there to be a clear roadmap of how this money will be distributed, and they also want it to be possible to get the money. Now, we spoke to one representative from India who says there seems to be political will to have the money in place, but they want it to be done faster so that countries can adapt this. He says countries cannot wait, and climate change is not waiting.
Now, Sarah, earlier on you mentioned food security, especially on the African continent. What sort of preventative or some sort of way to assist these African countries in prioritizing the climate change issue? What needs to be done, and for the bigger countries or the bigger economies to ensure that they do give funding for the poorest of poor countries?
Well, they spoke about having a smart agriculture, what they're calling smart agriculture in Africa, where they try to limit the use of water. So they're talking about getting new seeds that are easier to grow faster. But even all this will need funding. And so a lot of people here saying that all the facts that they're talking about, because they're talking about 135 million people who are at risk of being displaced because their land has been degraded, they're facing food insecurity issues. They say all this will still need a lot of money, and so they're saying any of the solutions that come out of this meeting, including the smart agriculture that is now being anticipated, will also need funding.
Now, finally, Sarah, for the rest of the week, what are some of the key discussions that are likely to dominate the meeting?
Well, there will be the first meeting to discuss funding, and that is one of the meetings that is expected to raise a lot of heat. There'll also be meetings to see how Africa now can move from fossil fuel energy to supporting energy transformation on the continent. Africa is talking about being able to add at least 10 gigawatts per year by 2020 to its grid, because at the moment they just add 1 gigawatt. So they will be talking about how to finance that. That has so far, the Africa Renewable Energy Initiative has so far attracted about $10 billion in pledges. They will be seeking for more money so that after the Paris Agreement, that now it can start being put into place. They will also be talking about how countries can move from just talk to now implementation, and also they'll be seeking to impress upon the 97 countries that have still not ratified the Paris Agreement to do it, at least by the end of the next 2 weeks.
Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. We'll have to leave it there for now. That was our correspondent, Sarah Kimani, with an update from Marrakesh in Morocco.